gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of this hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power. Spirit, draw near. Spirit, draw near. Spirit, draw near.
And as we have gathered, Jen is in our bell tower to ring our bell. Right there. Thank you, Jen.
Welcome to our beloved sanctuary, as well as our digital sanctuary on Zoom. My name is Ruth Kahn, and I am a member of the Music and Worship Committee, as well as on the board here at Theodore Parker Church. Many thanks to Mary Beth Noonan, who is our camera point person today, and to Tom Keidel, who is our Zoom usher. Those of you who are here in person, we ask that you keep your mask on at all times while indoors, though worship leaders may take off their masks at the mic when distanced from others, depending on their own comfort level. People of all ages are welcome to move about in the sanctuary as they need to, and coloring sheets are available in either entryway. Children's programming for elementary school kids will begin today after our Time for All Ages. Child care provider Abby is available to accompany nursery-aged children to our nursery room in the parish hall anytime. As we begin our service today, we acknowledge that our church was built on the ancestral, unceded land of the Massachusetts people. We acknowledge the devastating legacy of settler colonialism and the continuing harm done to Indigenous groups in our community and beyond. May our commitment to justice, equality, equity, and compassion call us to take meaningful restorative action to honor and protect the land and all her people. We come together to recognize and celebrate the gift of life for ourselves and for all the creatures with whom we share this planet, for the miracle of every breath, with wonder in our ways and our joys, and compassion in our sorrows. We invite all of you to bring your perspectives, your beliefs and doubts, and all that is unique and wondrous about you to our service. In the spirit of love, all are welcome here. If you're new to Theodore Parker Church or are visiting today, we'd love to stay in touch. You're invited to fill out a connection card, which will give you an opportunity to sign up for our weekly updates and help us welcome you. A link to the connection card will be put in the chat, as well as our contact information. Those joining us here in the sanctuary are encouraged to fill in the contact sheet you'll find in your pews within the bright yellow pamphlet. We'd like to offer a moment for those of us joining remotely to greet those who are joining us in person. So, Mary Beth, could you please put our sanctuary screen in gallery view so we can see our off-site congregation? Folks joining us on Zoom, give us a wave. And folks in the sanctuary, let's wave toward the camera, which is actually behind you under the clock. Wonderful. It's good to be together. We hope that each of you will find some comfort to carry with you over the week and some challenge for your thoughts. As always, we wish for each of you health, well-being, and a sense of peace. As our pianist, Yukiko Takagi, brings us into worship with Edvard Grieg's Arietta from 8 lyric pieces, we bid you welcome.
Thank you, Yukiko. Good morning, everyone here in person and online. Delighted to be with you this Sunday morning. This Sunday morning, I'm extra excited to be sharing the pulpit. My dear friend from seminary, Dr. Matthew E. Henry, is here. Give us a wave. Thank you. He's hiding in the pews until he gives the sermon. I'd love to introduce him briefly. Dr. Matthew E. Henry was raised in Christian environments, but he's a self-professed Hebrew Bible nerd. He's the person I text when I have a question about biblical scholarship. So I'm looking forward to hearing the way he brings our attention to a story about Miriam that I'd never particularly noticed, despite years of Hebrew school. He's an educator. He's worked from teaching education at the college level as a professor to now teaching high school English in Weston, Massachusetts. And he is how can I say it? He is an incredible poet. I'm really excited that his sermon today will weave together some of his latest poems from his latest publication called The Colored Page. They kind of knock me on my rear and just really make me pause every time I hear one. So I'm really excited to share those with you today. So with that, I open with this prayer from Reverend Joseph Cherry called A Prayer for Living in Tension. If we are to have any hope of transforming the world and changing ourselves, we must be bold enough to move into our discomfort, brave enough to be clumsy there, and loving enough to forgive ourselves and others. May we, as a people of faith, be granted the strength to be so bold, so brave, and so loving. So may it be. I invite us to raise our voices in our first hymn together. If you want to follow along in a hymnal, it's the gray one. It's number 298, Wake Now My Senses. This is one of my favorite hymns. The melody is a traditional Irish hymn, which is usually known as Be Thou My Vision. But we have new lyrics set to it by Thomas Nicholson. It's got many verses. Today we'll sing verses 1, 3, and 4, and the words will be up on the screen as well. invite you to rise in body, rise in spirit, and raise your voices as we sing today.
Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in awe. Keep with the web of creation your vow. Giving, receiving, as love shows us how. Wake now, compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Wake now my conscience with justice thy guide. Join with all people whose rights are denied. Take not for granted a privileged place. God's love embraces the whole human race.
You may be seated. Each week, we light our flaming chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalist community, with words of covenant, words of shared commitment. I welcome up Stenzi Royden and Dr. Robin Colgrove to lead us in speaking these words aloud. We'll say them first in English, and then we say them in Spanish in honor of our sister community in Plazuelas, El Salvador. Begins with the word love and should be up on the screen any moment. Mary Beth, is there a slide for that one this week? Thank you.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia y el servicio es nuestra oración. Esta es nuestra gran promesa, vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad con amor y ayudarnos los unos a los otros.
Thank you. And our lifespan religious educator, Rose Gologli, has a great story for us, introducing us to two very important biblical characters.
Thank you. Good morning. Special welcome to the children here today. We will be having Children's Chapel right after this story, but first, as you already know, I will need some help to tell this story. So as Joe said, later on in our service, Matthew will be talking about a passage from the Bible that features a few central people. Their names are Miriam, Aaron, and Moses. He'll be sharing more about them and what happens to them later, but when Reverend Joe and I were talking about this service, we thought it might be helpful for me to introduce them to you a bit first. If you're like me and don't hold the Bible as your holy text or didn't grow up learning about it, there are a lot of stories and people to keep track of. So I'm going to share specifically more about Moses and Miriam. Those are the main two people to learn about and keep in mind, and tell you some of the stories that they're a part of. And as I said, I'm also going to need a little help to tell this story. There are a few objects sprinkled around. I know my helpers are all ready to bring them up when it's time. And each of the objects represents a different part of the stories that I'm sharing. So when I get to each part of the story, I'll make it clear when it's time to bring up the object, and hopefully that'll help us keep track of what's going on. So first, who was Moses? Moses is a really significant prophet whose story we often tell around the time of Passover. Moses was an Israelite who was born in Egypt during a very difficult time, when the Pharaoh of Egypt was enslaving the Israelite people. As a baby, Moses' mother hid him away to protect him. She put him in a basket and let him float away to safety down the river Nile. Do I have a basket? Oh, thank you. Thank you, Tyler. First prop, the basket. Here is the basket. Now, this basket is an important part of Moses' story, and it's also a part of Miriam's story. So Miriam was Moses' older sister. And when her baby brother was put in this basket to float down the river to safety, she watched from a distance and made sure that he was found by good people. It ended up being the Pharaoh's own daughter who found baby Moses in the basket, and Miriam was the one who convinced her to take care of him. So it's because of Miriam, Moses' older sister, that Moses was safe enough to grow up to be an adult, and he went on to do so many important things. So the most important thing that we think of that Moses did when he was grown up is that he was chosen by God to lead the Israelite people out of slavery in Egypt and into freedom. The first time that God spoke to Moses to give him this very important task, God spoke from within a burning bush. Does anyone have our red fabric flames they want to bring up to represent our burning bush? Yeah, Nola, amazing. Thank you. Burning bush. So when Moses saw this bush that was on fire but not burning to ash, he knew that something very mysterious and holy was happening, and that it must be very important. God's message to Moses from that burning bush was the beginning of a long journey. I won't get into all the details of that story. It had many ups and downs, but eventually it led to Moses leading his people out of Egypt and into freedom. And at that point, when Moses is leading the Israelite people out of Egypt and to freedom, is when Miriam comes back into the story. Miriam does something very important when she joins the rest of the Israelite people on their journey to freedom. She brings a tambourine. Do we have a tambourine in the audience you could bring on up? Amazing. Thank you, Eleanor. So it's said really specifically in the Bible that Miriam brings this tambourine along with her on her journey to freedom. And on that journey that she led the other women in the group in song and dance as they walked the desert. This is one of the things that Miriam is best known for. And as unexpected as it is, I think it's a really powerful action. Even though she was fleeing for her life, leaving in a hurry and starting a long and unknown journey across the desert, she decided to bring a tambourine so that she could make sure there was song and dance and sacred joy as her people walked towards freedom. So with that image of the sacred joy of Miriam's tambourine and all the parts of the story that we just learned, I invite any children who are here who'd like to join me for Children's Chapel to come forward. We'll gather by the door over there. Today in Children's Chapel, we're going to be learning about courageous love, the love that we have for one another, even when things are hard. Please join me in singing our children's benediction, for you shall go out in joy.
Thank you.
For you shall go out in joy, for you shall go out in joy, and come back in peace, and come back in peace. Blessed
invite us into a time of centering, of kind of calming our hearts and fully arriving in this time and place. We'll sing our centering hymn, Make Channels for the Streams of Love. This is another one with Irish origins. The text is by Irish author Richard Trench. It was written in the 1800s. But the melody is known as Land of Rest, an American folk tune with roots in the ballads of England and Scotland. And it's known throughout the Appalachia mountain region. There's a shape note version of this tune published in the Sacred Harp. It's really lovely. It's going to be hymn number 299 in your gray hymnals, if you'd like. I invite us to center our hearts for love to be able to flow through as we sing. I invite you to rise in body, in spirit, or in voice as we sing.
Make channels for the streams of love where they may broadly run, and love has overflowing streams to fill them every one. But if at any time we cease such channels to provide, the very founts of love for us will soon be parched and dried. For we must share if we would keep this gift all else above. We cease to give, we cease to have, such is the law of love.
I want you to be seated. We share now in a time of meditation or prayer, first in words, then in about a minute of silence, and then in melody. Our words of prayer today are from the former UUA president, Reverend Bill Sinkford. Spirit of life and love, dear God of all nations, there is so much work to do. We have only begun to imagine justice and mercy. Help us hold fast to our vision of what can be. May we see the hope in our history and find the courage and the voice to work for that constant rebirth of freedom and justice. That is our dream. We share now in a time of quiet, followed by a musical meditation.
Generosity is a spiritual practice in our Unitarian Universalist congregations. We give to remind ourselves of how many gifts we have to offer. We give to remember that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. We give because we believe in music and sacred space. We give with gratitude for all that we have been given and with the faith that together we have more than enough. Links to donate will be in the chat, or you can take a meditative moment writing out a check and sending it to the church after the service. Ushers will be coming around the sanctuary to collect an offering from those in the pews who wish to donate something more tangible. As our TPC singers share Show Us How to Love with music by Mark Miller and text by Lindy Thompson, an offering to sustain this congregation of memory and hope will be gratefully received. Thank you.
welcome up Dr. Matthew Henry to share a sermon.
Good morning, everyone. That was a little sad. Let's try that again. Good morning, everyone. That's better. All right. I'd like to thank Reverend Joe for inviting me and all of you for the opportunity. I'm from a tradition that often the sermon is usually not lower than 30, 45 minutes or an hour. I'm not going to keep you here that long, but I love how some people check their watches immediately. If it's all right with you, I'd like to tell a story from the Bible, from the book of Numbers, chapter 12. It's a story of racism, response to racism, and reconciliation, some redemption at the end. Interspersed with that story will be some of the poems that I've written recently. Have a book called The Colored Page that Reverend Joe mentioned. It's a semi-autobiographical story of my own life, being, as one of my former students called it, a raisin in a bowl of milk. Being one of the only black or brown faces in a classroom or an entire district, either as a student, as a college student, as a doctoral student, now as a teacher entering my 20th year. So I'll be sharing some poems from the student perspective as well as from the teacher perspective. A little background of the story that we'll be focused on. It takes place after all of the things that Rose mentioned earlier. So this is after Moses and Aaron have gone to war verbally with the Pharaoh of Egypt, after they have crossed the Red Sea, they have traveled through the Promised Land, after Miriam has, that's actually one of my favorite passages where Miriam is leading the people in the song of worship with the tambourines. It's after all of that, but something has fallen apart in the relationship between these three prophets, Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. And Numbers chapter 12 doesn't give exactly what the cause of the breakdown was, but clearly something has changed. While they were at Hazeroth, Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Cushite woman he had married, for indeed he had married a Cushite woman. And they said, "Has the Lord spoken only through Moses?" And the Lord heard it. To me, the racism is obvious. There's been many a scholar and some pastors and some rabbis who've tried to skirt around it because they want these three characters to always look good. But the text is actually pretty clear. It says it twice. They spoke because he had married a Cushite woman. Because he had married a Cushite woman. Now, just for our conversation today, I understand that race theory now versus race theory back in the ancient Near East is not exactly the same thing. The mess of non-biological skin tone and what people look like that we deal with now is not the same as it was in the ancient Near East. For them, when they talked about race, it was more about nationality or ethnicity or religion. But in the Torah, whenever a Cushite is mentioned, another word used would be Ethiopian, this is actually one of the few places skin tone is not directly referenced. Whenever a Cushite is mentioned, it usually also references their darker skin tone. And so here, when it says that he indeed married a Cushite, it is very clear that Miriam and Aaron are trying to other her. So I will just refer to her as a black woman. By our standards, this Cushite woman would be a black woman. And so when Aaron and Miriam say, "Has not the Lord also spoken through us?" what they are really saying is, aren't we also prophets and better prophets than you? Because at least we stuck with our own kind. When we got married, we chose from amongst the children of Israel. We didn't choose one of those outsiders, one of those dark-skinned people. They're attacking Moses because of the skin tone of his wife, this black woman that he married. They suggest that there is something wrong, maybe even something off or sinister about the fact that she is amongst them. Classical conditioning. We sit at our newly minted desks, Melvin, Matthew, and Matt. Only 3 years from retirement, she finds our names difficult to distinguish. We bear no family resemblance. 2 are black, 1 is white. When a question is asked and more than one of our hands are raised, we're never sure which one she wants, unless she is smiling. An open letter to the school resource officer who almost shot me in my class. Was it the loud noises which drew your attention? Commotion you couldn't process 14 months from Afghanistan? A threat too quickly assessed through the 2x3 window of my classroom door? Was it my brown arms gesturing wildly? Or my beard, long and unkempt, which obscured thick lips, releasing a language you couldn't easily decipher? Agawaya, pillory, defarge. Was that what triggered rules of engagement normally absent halls so affluent? Did I seem out of place? Did you not notice my shirt and tie, my matching slacks, socks, and shoes? Could you not see the books open beneath mostly white faces, the smiles which faltered with your entrance? Many missed your sidearm slide back to safety as you stumbled to silence when I asked if I could help you. The two who share my skin saw everything, made eye contact, held it for 2 solid seconds. The next day, they took to calling me almost Tamir, while your near-miss story was met with laughter in your squad room. There is clear racism in the way that Miriam and Aaron were responding to their brother's marriage to this woman. But thankfully, the divine is on the job. Reading from verse 4, "Suddenly the Lord said to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, 'Come out, the 3 of you, to the tent of meeting.' And so the 3 of them came out. Then the Lord came down in a pillar of cloud and stood at the entrance of the tent and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both came forward. And the Lord said, 'Hear my words. When there's a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to them in visions and in dreams, but not so with my servant Moses. He is entrusted with my whole house, and with him I speak face to face, clearly, and not in riddles, and he beholds the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses?' And the anger of the Lord was kindled against them, and the Lord departed. But when the cloud went away from over the tent, Miriam had become leprous, as white as snow. And Aaron turned to Miriam, and she saw that she was leprous. The divine descends and then departs in a huff, but in between calls out the racism that he sees. And while it's not obvious in the text, it is by the punishment. See, leprosy is a skin disease that turns the skin very, very scaly, but also very white. There's a little poetic justice in this, that Miriam and Aaron would say, well, that woman is too dark. She's not as light as the rest of us. And the divine says, oh, you want to be white? You want to see what whiteness is? And more than that, a few verses later, Aaron, when he turns to his sister, he comments to Moses, she looks like a stillborn baby. That's how white she is. This punishment is too much to be borne. So, of course, they turn to their brother, the good prophet amongst them, and ask, speak to God on our behalf. Change this punishment. And Moses cried to the Lord, oh God, please heal her. But the Lord said to Moses, if her father had but spit in her face, would she not bear her shame for 7 days? So let her be shut out of the camp for 7 days. And again, after that, she may be brought in. So Miriam was shut out of the camp for 7 days. Miriam would treat this black woman like an other, feel that she shouldn't be a part of the community. And so the divine says, well, she will bear the same. She'll be outside of the community for a time. Calling out injustice is needed. It's important. Actions have consequences. The text says so, the divine says so, and I would assume that we should say so as well. And sometimes it's important for people to see the impact of the injustice that they mete out on others. Sometimes, if possible, they should see and experience the same for themselves. 12 minutes a slave. We held a slave auction in class today. Probably not a state-sanctioned component of AP US history, but Mr. S made a block out of the front row desks, cornered it off with backwards-facing chairs. He shame-forced Tony Miller above us, introduced him as item number 5, prepared a catalog, a one-sided sepia sheet with Tony's description and a starting price. Before the bidding, Mr. S made Tony turn in perfect circles so we could all see what we were getting. made him show his gums and teeth, roll up his sleeves and flex, lift an Oxford unabridged over his head, and strain for as long as he could. We were encouraged to holler, not yell. Intrusive questions about Tony's pedigree and prior owners. To discuss if he was better suited for house or field, to speculate about breeding options. After Tony climbed down, unable to meet our eyes or the oppressive silence, I was almost ashamed that a white teacher treating one of his own like this made my brown skin rattle with the joy of falling chains. The story does not end with Miriam outside the community. As I said, this is a story of racism, a response to the racism, but also redemption, of reconciliation. Reading from the end of the chapter. So Miriam was shut out of the camp for 7 days. And the people did not set out to march until Miriam had been brought back in again. And after that, the people set out from Hazeroth and camped in the wilderness of Paran. Redemption, reconciliation means that we move things back from where they once were to where they could be again. If there's been a breach in community, we need to repair that breach and bring even the offenders back into relationship with others. That's hard work at times. It's not easy, but if we can call sin, sin, if we can say that consequences must be doled out, we can also do the hard work of making sure that those who are on the other side of the community can be brought back in. It's easy to cancel people, but can we get the programming running as it should be again? Doing the hard work of reconciliation is hard, but it requires honesty. When asked why, all lives don't matter. After a deep breath, I attempted to explain. My aunt had breast cancer. Despite a healthy dose of science and scripture, prayer and prescriptions, the shadow never dimmed. We celebrated her life, mourned the hole her grave dug in ours. We lauded her loving kindness, questioned the natural shocks flesh is heir to, why this disease would claim a wife, a co-worker, a friend, an aunt. At the repast, heads turned to the future, saving other sons and daughters, ourselves. A collection was taken to fund breast cancer research, a medical scholarship for oncology study discussed, a proposal for new. From the back of the church hall, a woman no one recognized shouted, "What about ovarian cancer and prostate cancer? Why aren't you talking about those? All cancers matter." Most of my students nodded into the ensuing silence. But some blank stares in my job description doomed me to be more didactic, to explain appropriate time, place, and manner, intent versus impact, the guilt and shame required to derail communal grief and hijack a narrative to make oneself more comfortable. I explained to them the human duty to choose. Enter the room willing to bear bodies on our shoulders, or, arms empty, leave and silently stand outside. I said, replace cancer with lives, and waited. That should be the end of the story. Told you at the beginning, going to go through Numbers chapter 12, story of racism, response, and reconciliation, redemption, and that is where the Bible ends, where the Torah ends. But I was always struck and stuck that there's something that the Bible doesn't talk about, the reality of the situation. What about the black woman's reality? Moses doesn't comfort her in the text. Like, where's her husband? Good job. They'll be in counseling for that one, I'm sure. There's no apology from Miriam or Aaron in this story. Even the divine descending in a cloud, departing in a huff, doesn't say anything directly to the black woman. The poetic justice, I'm sure, is appreciated, but she still has to live with what happened and the aftermath. Her very existence was weaponized against her husband. She was supremely othered, and not even to her face. And we know how people are. Right, Miriam got canceled, she's outside, but you know the second she came back in, all her friends are probably gossiping and talking. I mean, honestly, all Miriam did was say the truth. She is a Cushite woman. I mean, she is darker than the rest of us. I mean, why did Moses marry her in the first place? I mean, shh, quiet, she's coming. Hi. You don't want to get put outside too, just quiet. Because that's what humans do. Literally 2 days ago, one of my students was othered in a way I won't go into, actually about her religion. And she was sharing the story with me in the library, and I was comforting her, trying to make her feel better about it. And when I leave about 10 minutes later, one of my other students, who I also love to death, was like, well, did she tell you the real story? Did she tell you everything that went down? And I'm like, why are you trying to defend someone else's horrible actions to this young lady? Well, it's because they're friends of yours who did the thing. How easy it is for us to make excuses for the other people when we like and care about them. But the reality is that this black woman was othered, and no one's talking about it. The story is even structured in a way that we're focused on Miriam's bad action and the punishment that she gets. We're focused on the fact that, and I skipped over a couple verses, but it spends a lot of time talking about how great Moses is. Like, we focus on that. We focus even on the divine saying, how dare you question my anointed? But nothing about the victim. What about the black woman that's harmed? Have you even noticed I keep referring to her as a black woman, or the Cushite, or the Ethiopian? She's not even named. She's just the Cushite woman, just an Ethiopian woman, just this black woman. And the whole while, the black woman was just being, just existing in her skin. Is it really redemption without restitution? Is it really reconciliation if we're not actually talking to the victims in any way, shape, or form? We're just focused on punishment and bringing people back into the fold who are guilty of actions. I'm going to read this poem. I guess the preamble will be, it's going to use the N-word. Don't want to assume anyone's identities, but I think I'm the only person in the room who's allowed to say it. If you are offended by the word, good. But if you are offended by hearing the word more than the context of the poem, that speaks to a bigger problem. This is a true, all these poems are true stories, but this is something that happened just a few years ago. It actually made the news, so some of you might have heard about it there. An open letter to the white girls caught chanting nigger on Snapchat again. How privileged you are that the social stigma of being a racist lingers for only a week. That white woman tears wash away the stench that should still be stuck to the roof of your mouth, but it's not your fault. You don't know that words have meanings or histories, and it is so unfair that we get to say it. This reverse racism, which makes you too uncomfortable to sing our songs outside of monochromatic parties fueled by Sour Dab and White Claw, but you weren't singing. Your coven chanted your word of the night as if to summon Jim Crow and Judge Lynch from their light slumber. It's our fault you never had the ovicular fortitude to laugh slur in front of we who must now endure an apology as honest as your hair compared to its roots. And as your parents rush to protect your fragile backs from the whips and lash of eyes as you pass through the halls, the right whispers calling you exactly what you are, your former teacher has only one question. Avoided by administration, cautioned by legal counsel. Which nigger replaced my name? Replaced Chris and Latoya's, Hannah and Timothy's, Michael and Anthony's, Naoma and Ashanti's, Shania and Ashley's. When that situation went down, all the names that I read there at the end of the poem are the black students who were seniors when their supposed friends were chanting at a party their word of a night over and over again. There was really nothing that happened. There was punishment for the girls, somewhat, and then bringing them back into community quickly, but no one wanted to address the victims of the situation. So where do we go from here? Yes, we can see racism. We can see injustices of all sorts. Yes, we can respond to them. Yes, we can seek redemption for those who have been put on the outside because of their actions. But why is it so much easier for us to punish the guilty than it is for us to comfort the hurting? Why is it easier for us to throw stones against those who have done evil than it is for comfort those who evil have been done against? Or why is it easier for us to throw stones instead of standing in front of those who the stones are being thrown at? Why do we think more of the victimizers than the victims? We do the hard work often, especially as people of faith, of trying to bring people back into the fold. Do we spend as much time helping those who have been hurt, who never left the fold, who were attacked just because they were there? They were the sheep of a different color. So where do we go from here? And who is my neighbor? Jesus replied, a man was going down from insert place of work, convenience store, home, or church, to insert place of work, convenience store, home, or church, unarmed, and fell into the hand of officers who stopped him for insert ing while black reason. They shot him, stood above his leaking body, and left him for dead. Now, by chance, a white man, evangelical, was going down his Twitter feed, and when he saw him, he scrolled quickly past saying, #Blue Lives Matter. Likewise, a white woman, Presbyterian, came to the place on her Facebook feed. She saw him and scrolled quickly past saying, #All Lives Matter. But when the insert the least expected saw him, they came near. Moved with pity and outrage, they went to the dead man's family to bandage their wounds, pouring action and appropriate silence as compassion. They put the burdens on their backs, addressed them as they were able. The next day they had not forgotten, but took two friends and encouraged them to do more than march or #the moment, saying, we will continue the work together, be not afraid. The Lord will repay whatever social capital we spend. Then Jesus asked, which of these three was a neighbor to the man who fell into unholy hands? The insert one playing devil's advocate said, the one who acknowledged his dignity. And Jesus replied, now go and do likewise. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Whew. Oh, do y'all need to stretch for a second? I'm a little shorter than Matthew is. Thanks. Beloveds, I invite us to absorb what we have heard and take it into our hearts, take it into actions. In that spirit, our closing hymn is all about those actions which make change, which address harm, which make things better, which build a new way. So our closing hymn is in the Teal hymnal, number 1017, if you want to follow along there, Building a New Way. It was written by Martha Sandeffer. She wrote it in the folk style, the style of the folk group, the Weavers. The version in our hymnal was arranged by Jim Scott. Let us build a new way as we sing. Let's rise in body, spirit, and voice as we sing.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We are working to be free. our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without these, this world will die. Peace and freedom is our cry.
Thank you. You have a seat. I share now some invitations and announcements, some ways to stay connected with the Theodore Parker Church community within these walls and beyond over the weeks to come. First, we have a small group ministry program which launched a little while ago, and I can let you know there is a group that still has some room in it on the Wednesday evening group that meets once a month at 7 p.m. Small group ministry is a chance to reflect and develop deep connection, reflect on spiritual themes, the ones we do each month here. If you're interested, you can contact Suzanne Missert or Marianne Millsap for more info. You can always just email office@tparkerchurch.org and we'll get you connected to the right people. You needn't be a longtime member or even a member at all to join, just if you're looking for some more connection. It's a great way to do it. Following this service, we'll have a time for sharing joys and concerns. Following that, a coffee hour in the parish hall, I believe, just through these doors. And then after you get a nice lunch break at 3 o'clock today, I believe right here in the sanctuary so that we can show a presentation, we have Aubrey, a dog trainer, coming in and doing community canines, body language, and stress-free city living. I know from last week's Blessing of the Animal service, a number of us live with animal companions. This is a great way to learn more and to get to know some of our neighbors in the greater West Roxbury community who are coming in. So it's 3 o'clock today. Next Saturday, we have a couple of cool Halloween events. Saturday morning, I don't remember exactly the time, but there's this parade that goes down Center Street, kids in costume. A number of folks from Welcoming Ministry will be out front to hand out candy and information about Theodore Parker Church. It's always a fun time. You can come to that, sign up ahead with Cindy Bergeron or Pat Hamilton, or you could just show up. And then at 7 p.m., some friends and I are doing a Halloween concert co-sponsored by this church. Costumes encouraged, but just come to have fun, hear some music, and hang out. There's going to be lots of extra candy as well. Finally, I invite up Dave Harrington from our Ministerial Search Committee to give us 2 little updates from the Search Committee.
Thank you, Reverend Joe. The first is about the listening circles, which I'll say just a word about later, but they're open and we are looking for more registrations. We've converted one that was at Zoom to in-person. It's coming up soon, so please have a look if you haven't had a chance to participate. So I have a very brief update about the results of the survey, and I have to say that this is a very dry thing following an absolutely magnificent sermon. So I'm a little nervous here.
Can you give it to us in a poem form, Dave?
Pardon me?
Can you give it to us as a poem?
Can I do it as a poem? Extemporaneously.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So Joel, if you could give me the first slide here of TPC in words and pictures, thanks. So first of all, this is a skimming the surface. Very little time here for any analysis or questions. If you have questions, and I'm sure people will, you can either talk to me in coffee hour or you can send mail to ministersearch@tparkerchurch.org, the same email that you've been using for everything all along. Joel, or Mary Beth, the next slide, please. So we sent surveys to 184 people, 124 members, 60 friends, and we had 85 responses, 72 from self-identified members. So remember, the survey is anonymous, so we don't know if people responding were members or not, but according to what they rated. We had very good response rate, 58% among all members and 68% among the active members. Now that 104 active numbers is a very soft number. That's a, dare I say it, a Gretchen Dietz Sheila number about people who are on our rolls but very active. Some selected demographics, Mary Beth? So we are an older church. 85% are 60 years or older. In fact, more than 50% of us are older than 70. The number of households without children matches that demographic. So 90% of the children, 90% of the households right now don't have children. We identified as 98% white as our racial or ethnic identity, 78% female, 32% identified as non-heterosexual. Mary Beth, we have some very interesting long-term stickiness in the church. People stay, which is wonderful. So this complicated graph shows how long people have been attending the church. So on the bottom are the years. Inside the bars are the counts of the 81 responses, because not everybody responded to this. So the astonishing thing is that more than 50% of the folks here have been attending more than 6 years, and a significant number more than 11 years. Now, what we hope, of course, is that the people that are down there in the 1 to 5, 1 to 2, 3 to 5 will stick around, and that they will be joined by other people so that we will continue to have long-term stayers. Why do people stay? What's your favorite thing? Mary Beth, don't show the next slide yet. Oh, you did? Okay, that's fine. I was going to have a little quiz. So we got an extraordinarily strong signal in the survey. People are here because of the community and the sense of belonging. There are lots of reasons, and you can see it in this word cloud that adapts the size of the word to numbers of mention. It's much better than a table, but you can see that community services very, very important. Mary Beth, next slide. We took the temperature.
Sorry, we didn't have much time with the word cloud. There we go.
Okay, next one after the word,
They want a second with the word cloud.
Pardon me?
They want a second with the word cloud.
They want a second with the word cloud. A second description?
No, they just wanted to look at it for a minute.
Wanted to look at it. Oh,
Good?
soak it up.
Oh, no. Okay.
Okay. So I should have said at the beginning, on the 4th of December, the search committee will give a much longer presentation that will integrate what we learned from the listening circles, from the survey, and we'll do it somewhere in the church, but we won't use up valuable time post-service.
And we can take this word cloud and put it in the newsletter this coming week. Make sure you open your newsletter.
We can do that. We can do that. All right, next slide, Mary Beth. So we took the temperature of the congregation on some really important items, and you may remember that there were a series of choice questions where you were asked to either disagree or agree at various levels with certain aspects of TPC life. One of the things that surprised us and pleased us, and kudos to the AV team, Reverend Joe and others for doing this, 92% thought we were doing a pretty good job with Zoom of keeping community together. It clearly carried us through. The other thing that we initially didn't have on the survey, 89% of you feel that coffee hour is really important. And it is really important, and it's part of that sense of community, and it's one of the reasons that we're all sort of struggling with this hybrid nature of our services and anxious to figure out how we're going to keep that community together. There's a high level of trust in the leadership, 80%. 78% thought we were financially stable. We have a core group able to lead change, and maybe we're a little less likely to agree that we're flexible, but not too bad. That's a pretty good mark. Okay, Mary Beth. So my colleague on the search committee, Jennifer Buchwald, has a nice way of saying this. Who are we looking for in a minister? Someone who comes with their own phone booth and cape so they can do almost everything really well.
No problem.
More than 85% of the respondents to the survey thought these roles were important for the minister: the pastoral role, inspiring and challenging services, fostering growth in size and diversity, fostering community, supporting families, and the prophetic role, which is a short way of saying helping us look forward and decide how to move into the future. So the last slide is simply an acknowledgement of thanks. Lots of people worked hard on this, but the real gratitude is for the community who took time to do a survey that was on average about 30 minutes long. It was not simple. And you are also taking time to do the listening circles. Now, one of the things that's important about what you agree with, Chekhov would say about this survey, everybody who agrees with something, like trust in the leadership, agrees about the same way. Everybody who disagrees probably has a different reason for that. And the listening circles are our chance to find out more deeply, what do you think about certain aspects, and if you disagree with something, please tell us, because we don't want either the majority or the plurality to trick us into thinking that's all people are concerned about in the church. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave, and all of the members of the ministerial search team. You're doing an amazing job. Finally, I share these closing words before our postlude and time of joys and sorrows. Again, from Bill Sinkford, beloveds, there is so much work to do. We have only begun to imagine justice and mercy. Let us hold fast to our vision of what can be. May we see the hope in our history and find the courage and the voice to work for that constant rebirth of freedom and justice. That is our dream. Amen.